Welcome into another episode of Takedown City as we're here to get you ready for Saturday's UFC 279 headlined by Khamzat Chimaev, who is a massive betting favorite, over 11-1 betting favorite, taking on Nate Diaz. Also, we got Tony Ferguson returning to welterweight as he'll be taking on Lee Jingliang. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. We are sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. We'll talk about the offer that DraftKings Sportsbook has for new users here in a little bit. Of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, how you doing, bro?
What is going on? It's nice to be back. It's nice to talk about another card. And of course, with my boy headlining it, it just seems right. So I'm excited to see Khamzat Chimaev perform. Obviously, it's against an aging veteran, but definitely is still a stiff test ahead of him. So I'm excited to see him perform.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. I think there's a lot of correlation between this main event and last week's main event, where you have a big underdog on both sides of the equation. Last week it was Tuivasa. This week it's Nate Diaz, but they're both fan favorites. And so, there's going to be a lot of people rooting for them. And we'll talk about kind of, we're going to have to be prop game hunting on Khamzat Chimaev. We all know Pete loves Khamzat Chimaev. We're going to go prop game hunting there. But let's start off with the first fight of the pay-per-view. That is Johnny Walker taking on Ian Cutelaba. Johnny Walker plus 165. Ian Cutelaba is minus 195. And this is one of these fights, Pete, that I look at, I say, man, who do I trust more in this matchup? Johnny Walker, he's lost 4 out of 5. 3 of his last 5 fights have ended in the first round. Look at Ian Cutelaba since 2019. He is 2-4-1. Of course, those losses all against elite competition, Glover Teixeira, Mamed Ankalaev, and also his last matchup against Ryan Spann. But he's one of these guys that Ian, he is either he's going to finish early or this thing's going 3 rounds. I thought what was interesting about listening to Johnny Walker during his media day this week was the fact of he talked about how he's gotten off CBD and THC. He said it just messed with it. He said it made him paranoid. He said there'd be times where he just wouldn't show up to training or show up late to training. He's been training over there in Ireland under SPG. This is one of those ones that, like, man, like, I don't trust either guy, man. I just don't trust either guy.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I don't know if I'm buying that CBD story, but I will tell you that this is going to be an exciting fight for as long as it lasts. And I think naturally everybody's going to be looking for the under, and it makes a ton of sense. And I think it's going to be a violent fight. And we have 2 guys that are somewhat inconsistent. I do actually prefer the Ian Cutelaba side, just because I feel like I can trust his skill set a little bit more. And I actually think that he is the more durable of the 2, even though we've seen Cutelaba get taken out of there as well against Ankalaev. But and we've seen him, get stopped via submission. On the feet, Johnny Walker is going to be very, very dangerous because his 7-inch reach advantage is going to pose problems at distance for Cutelaba. It's up to Cutelaba to, close that space and make this an ugly fight where he can land shots, whether it's working in takedowns and en route to a ground and pound finish. That's kind of how I foresee this going. I actually think one way or another, somebody's getting knocked out. So if you want to just target the KO line, I think that's fair, but it's going to be juiced like crazy. So I'm actually surprised to see the under 1.5 sitting at decent money at minus 150 for this fight. I expect violence and I expect recklessness at times. So I'm going to be siding with Cutelaba, and Cutelaba by KO, TKO sits at minus 110, and that's where I'm going to be.
And if you want to look at the other side of the equation here with Johnny Walker winning by KO, TKO, plus 250 on here, I would say this. I'm kind of looking at that over 1.5 rounds, thinking that maybe we go a little bit more, plus one. I want to say it was plus 120 is the number there of over 1.5 rounds. I mean, look, I mentioned a second ago, Ian Cutelaba. I mean, look, when I think of Ian Cutelaba, I do think of somebody that is a little wild manish, maybe the way to say it. But also I do wonder, is we saw him go that takedown route against Dustin Jacoby. Could that potentially be a method here, taking this fight to the ground? And maybe that leads us to get past that 7.5 minute mark.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely fair. So for Cutelaba, I'm expecting him to be aggressive, training at Extreme Couture. He has great teammates and great coaching staff surrounding him now. I really think that they're going to tailor his game plan around his strengths, which is definitely his overpowering wrestling, getting in good position, just maintaining good position, having good control time, but also implementing some ground and pound, which could make the over hit. The over 1.5, as you said, sits at plus 120. But I find it interesting because the under 2.5 sits at minus 305. So a lot of people are expecting this to finish in the second, but kind of it's going to be close. I don't expect it to go the distance, but I am expecting Cutelaba to utilize his wrestling to negate that reach disadvantage that he has in this matchup.
Next up, we have got a female matchup at 135 pounds. You got Irene Aldana taking on Macy Chiasson. Macy Chiasson, a plus 155 betting underdog in this one. On the other side, Irene Aldana is minus 180. Of course, Irene Aldana, first fight since July of last year, which was that TKO win against Yuna Kunitskaya. She did miss weight in that matchup, so that's something you want to pay attention to on Friday. What does she weigh in at? I want to say she was 139.5 for her last matchup. She has 3-1 her last 4 fights. 2 of those wins have come by TKO, KO. But one of my notes about Irene Aldana leading this one is she's been an inactive fighter over the last 3 years. She's only fought 3 times since December of 2019. She's not fought 2 times in a single year since 2019. Now you look at the other side with Macy Chiasson. She's been fighting at 145 pounds. She returns to 135 pounds for this matchup. Last time she did fight at 135 was that decision win against Marion Renault. Her last 3 wins are come by decision. I mean, look, we know in female MMA, in the UFC, about how much that over 2.5 round prop lays in here. But, looking at, we got some big favorites on this one. In terms of some of these favorites that are under 2-1 and below, Irene Aldana is one of my favorite plays at minus 180.
Yeah, I really like Irene Aldana in this matchup against Macy Chiasson. I do think that it's going to be a competitive bout, and largely due to Macy's skill set, right? Like Macy's very talented in all areas, pretty good striker, usually the better striker in most of her matchups. And she can also mix in takedowns as well. And I think that's what makes her so dangerous and versatile in certain matchups. Now, I think she's going to meet her match here against Irene Aldana, who sports a pretty strong takedown defense at 84%. And in addition to that, she's going to be outgunned on the feet just because of the volume of Irene Aldana and the boxing skill set. So whereas Macy Chiasson is usually able to land, decent volume herself, she gets away with a lot because she's not dealing with such a highly skilled, striker as her adversary. And I do think that Irene Aldana is going to have her number on the feet. I can actually see Macy Chiasson making this a grindy type of fight, and that's her path to victory, is make this ugly, close the gap, and just try to make this an MMA contest, just mixing it in at range. Despite having a reach advantage over Irene Aldana of 4 inches, I actually think that Irene Aldana is going to just kind of pick her apart at range. So I like Irene Aldana. I can see where people would want to get to the KO TKO prop sitting there at plus 300. I am actually going to say that Irene Aldana is going to win by decision, sitting at plus 140. That's my play, and that's kind of how I foresee this fight going. I just think it's going to be a good performance, but if she goes out there and she knocks out Macy Chiasson, I will be pleasantly surprised. But I'm not excluding it from my bets. I just think the most likely outcome is to win over 15 minutes, sitting there at plus 140.
Of course, if you want to make a bet on the fights, you got to check out our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook, as they have a limited time offer for new users of DraftKings Sportsbook. To take advantage of this, all you got to do is just bet at least $5 on an NFL or college football game, and you'll get $200 instantly. It's that easy. Click the link in the video description below to claim your free $200 now. That's for new users of DraftKings Sportsbook. So you got to check out our friends over there at DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's move over to the next matchup, as it is a catchweight matchup of 180 pounds. Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez. This fight came together about 3 weeks ago. Kevin Holland, the betting favorite in this one, he is minus 200, plus 170 for Daniel Rodriguez. Kevin Holland said yesterday that this matchup being at 180 pounds was not something he requested. He was all down to fight at 170. Daniel Rodriguez is the one that fought at 180 pounds. And one of the crazy things that Kevin Holland said yesterday in his media scrum was the fact that he goes, I like cutting weight. I don't know how many fighters, Pete, would naturally say, I like cutting weight.
I don't know. Maybe who knows? He's a maniac, and I love him. And perhaps it's because he knows a fight's looming, so it gets you in that mode. But I was going to ask you who requested the catch weight, and I'm happy to hear that it wasn't Kevin Holland, and it makes sense. I am interested in this matchup, right? And this week, unlike some weeks, I'm not too interested in a lot of underdogs. I can see where Daniel Rodriguez can make this a competitive matchup. He's a pretty good striker himself. He has some good volume, actually some exceptional volume if you really want to look at his previous fights. Sitting there at 8.06 strikes landed per minute. That's extremely significant. But I think that's largely overblown in some matchups because of some early finishes. I think that the range and the reach advantage for Kevin Holland, 7-inch reach advantage for Kevin Holland, is going to cut some of that volume in half. And Rodriguez is going to have to be extremely selective of his entries because I think that Kevin Holland can knock him out. I really do. And seeing how Dwight Grant clipped and hurt Daniel Rodriguez, obviously that was some time ago now, back in August of 2020. I can just see the skill set of Kevin Holland being on display. There's two guys that like to strike. If it hits the mat, it hits the mat. Most people that fight Kevin Holland do not feel comfortable standing up, and they want to change levels and take him to the mat. And that's the easiest path to victory against Kevin Holland, is just being a better wrestler than him. He's a decent grappler, pretty good grappler actually, but it's the wrestling that he struggled with over and over throughout his fights. So I think this is going to be a kickboxing fight. I really do. I favor Kevin Holland sitting there at -200. I have a feeling he clips and hurts Daniel Rodriguez. So every single time Kevin Holland fights, I'm going to be circling that TKO KO prop sitting there at +220. And I'm definitely all about it. I really like Kevin Holland sitting at +225 right now, actually. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great prop you found there. The prop that stuck out to me on this one, I'm like you, I do think this fight is going to be a kickboxing matchup. I mean, look, if the smart fight plan would be for Daniel Rodriguez to try to take this one to the ground, but that's not necessarily his game. Kevin Holland called Daniel Rodriguez's boxing street boxing level.
Okay.
Which I basically, this is how I took this, is that Kevin Holland's like, look, I'm the more technical guy. Yes. My head's not going to be in a straight line. I'm going to move side to side. He's going to have a tough time hitting me. The prop that I was really looking at was Kevin Holland wins via decision +220, or +200, excuse me. But that TKO KO prop, I like that one as well. I mean, I think if you maybe wanted to chase some money there, maybe look at Kevin Holland wins round 3. I think that may be a prop to kind of, if you're looking to go big game prop hunting, that may be a prop to kind of stick out there to look for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be competitive. I really do. And I could see Daniel Rodriguez's skills being on display and him landing shots and combinations, and both of them biting down on that mouthpiece and trading. And we've seen both of them rocked, both of them hurt. So if you want to make a case for Daniel Rodriguez, I can't really fault you there. I just like where Kevin Holland's at within his career right now, and his upward trajectory is going to make me want to, target that KO TKO prop sitting there at +225. Or even that decision prop sitting there at +200.
Well, as we move over to the co-main event, it's Li Jialing taking on Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson returning to 170 and taking on Jialing here. Jialing a -305 betting favorite, +255 for Tony Ferguson. There was a picture that came out this week of Tony Ferguson, what he looks like at 170. He did mention yesterday the fact that he has been working on strength and conditioning to kind of prepare for this move to 170. The one thing that you do like about Tony Ferguson, he's now training at Jackson Wink. It's been a little bit of time at Black House as well. He indicated during his chat with the media that essentially the first time in 5 years that sparring has been a big portion of his fight camp, which Pete, I mean, from a fighter, you hear that. What's going through your mind?
That's like a swimmer who doesn't swim. I don't understand. You got to spar, man. You know what I mean? Like you have to spar, and you don't have to, have bangers like in the gym. Like you can do technical sparring, but like it's really good for timing, and it's really good for timing. It's really good for getting acclimated to how a fight's going to be. Also, I don't know. It's the best type of preparation there is. Like you can go run a marathon and then go fight in the cage, and it's two completely different cardio systems. So I don't like hearing that. And I've always thought that Tony Ferguson is an absolute wild card. I've never been a Tony Ferguson guy, but with all that being said, I have massive levels of respect for him and what he has done for the sport. And he's extremely dangerous. And even till this day, like if you go back and you watch the Chandler fight, he was giving Chandler some problems. Yep. He really was. So, I know the result is kind of being like, it's the only thing people care about. And it's, at the end of the day, did you win or did you lose? And he's at a tough part of his career right now, but the skills are still there. The durability is the big question mark for me that we don't know until we know. And I actually think that it's gone. I think the Justin Gaethje fight is where you really started to see the difference maker in Tony Ferguson's career. And in some grappling type of matchups, it wasn't really shown again. But against Michael Chandler, it was on full display. I just don't think that the durability is there. And, if you want to tell me that Ferguson elbows Jingliang up on the feet, cuts him up, knocks him down, ends up choking him out, I really wouldn't be surprised. And I don't like betting against UFC legends. So I probably take my money elsewhere. But in 2022, I really have to tell you that I think Jingliang finishes Tony Ferguson. I do. So that's going to be my pick. I think that he's going to knock him out. But with all that being said, I think there's better ways to make money on this card. And like I said, I don't really like going against UFC legends because every single time you count them out, they end up pulling something from the jaws of defeat. And it's not like you're getting exceptional money. Plus 110 for Jingliang via KO TKO. I wish there was more meat on the bone for that one, but I do expect that to happen.
The prop on this fight that sticks out to me the most, that I like the most, is the under 2.5 rounds at minus 140. I'm with you. I don't think this thing's going to go 15 minutes. It might hit the third round. We might have to sweat that one out a little bit, but that to me is a prop that sticks out to me the most. Now, if you're looking to get a little juicy prop, really juicy prop, Tony Ferguson wins round 3 is plus 2,000 if you really want to get crazy here. But I pulled some interesting stats on Tony Ferguson. Last time Tony Ferguson beat a fighter that's currently in the UFC, November 5th, 2016 against RDA. Ready for even crazier stat?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I mean, Ferguson's been in the UFC for a long time.
Very long time.
Out of all of his UFC wins, only 2 are still in the promotion: Edson Barboza and Rafael Dos Anjos. Now, look, he has been fighting the elite of the elite at 155 pounds, but that one stuck out to you. Of course, he hasn't won since 2019, that win there against Donald Cerrone. Li Jialing is seeking back-to-back wins for the first time since 2019, but to me, there's too many unknowns right now with Tony Ferguson at where he's at this stage of his career to have a lot of faith in him. But I understand why someone may get there, seeking, big money on a dog.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fun play, right? Like, I'm expecting Jingliang to win. I'm picking Jingliang to win, but for small money, I probably will still I'll probably throw it on Tony Ferguson inside the distance because I don't think it's a terrible line, sitting at plus 475. His KO prop sits at plus 1,000. He's always given people problems on the feet, and I think Jingliang has shown susceptibility to getting rocked in the past. And we know that if he gets it to the mat somehow, that he has exceptional jiu-jitsu. So at plus 800, you know what I mean? So I think it's a fun bet, but one I would not recommend.
And then we got the main event, Khamzat Chimaev taking on Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, a plus 750 betting underdog in this one. Khamzat Chimaev minus 1150. I mean, you're talking if you're looking at probabilities, this tells you that Khamzat Chimaev's got over a 90% chance of winning this matchup, Pete.
Yeah, and I'll never say never. And I agree with odds sometimes, but at the end of the day, I know how crazy this sport is. And it seems like it's a coin flip anytime somebody steps in the octagon. Obviously I am favoring Khamzat Chimaev. I think that the UFC is doing Nate Diaz a little dirty, and perhaps he forced their hand and he's made it extremely difficult to deal with from a management standpoint, just a negotiation standpoint. So this could be payback in a sense, but I also think that there are plenty of other good matchups that the UFC could have catered around Diaz, who's a staple within the UFC for so many years. Tell me Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson doesn't sound like a banger. That fight should have happened. That's a phenomenal matchup, 2 fighters, and almost the same points of their career. Instead of just feeding Nate Diaz to the wolf, and I do think that Khamzat Chimaev is just a nightmare of a matchup. If you want to kind of go back and look at a fight where I expect similar performance, Rory McDonald body slamming Nate Diaz, ragdolling him en route to just a dominant victory. And Khamzat Chimaev, I think, is extremely violent and more violent than Rory McDonald was back then.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Nate, fighting here at 170. I know people have mentioned about that Rory fight. This is one of these fights where I think for a lot of people will be rooting for Nate Diaz to win this fight. And I totally agree with you. I think the matchup to May would have been him versus Tony Ferguson. That would have been a fun fight. You could headline this pay-per-view with that fight.
No-brainer.
But the UFC, they're looking. This is classic UFC matchmaking of they know they have a fighter who's walking out the door after this fight. He's not coming back, so they want to try to feed him to that up and coming guy and have him showcase on that guy. To me, like on the Khamzat Chimaev thing, you can't even touch the money line. I mean, at minus 1150, you can't. So you have to go prop game hunting over here. Yeah. And the prop that sticks out to me on Khamzat Chimaev is him winning round 3, which is plus 550, thinking that Nate will survive. And it would not surprise me that if ultimately this is a matchup that is ended via doctor stoppage due to cuts, we've seen Nate Diaz get cut up a lot. I mean, look, we saw what happened with Nate Diaz in his fight against Leon Edwards late in that fight. I will say this now, we talk about there's things we know and things we don't know. One of the things that I'm just curious with Khamzat Chimaev is, do we see more of a labored approach, knowing that this is a 5-round fight? We saw that fight against Gilbert Burns when he came out like that, he thought it was only a 5-minute fight. And we saw in that 3rd round, he started to wear down. So like that to me is one of the things of, could we see a labor? I mean, look, I'm with you. The path to victory here for Khamzat Chimaev is just take this one to the ground. Now, obviously Nate Diaz is very talented off his back, but to me, that's the path to go in there. If he goes in there and he decides to have a kickboxing matchup, I mean, look, I love the power of Khamzat Chimaev, but to me, that if that were to happen, that to me says this is a fight that could hit the 4th and 5th round. Yeah,
so I agree with a lot of your points, and I will say that Khamzat Chimaev, Nate Diaz, if it was 3 rounds, I would probably be targeting Khamzat Chimaev to win by decision. 5 rounds is really hard for me to get behind because I do think that Khamzat Chimaev can be extremely dominant. I don't know if he can go 25 minutes yet. I know that his work rate is crazy in the gym. I think his pacing is an issue, and that was pretty evident against Gilbert Burns, where we saw him go out there, as you mentioned, thinking it was just he was going to get rid of him in 1 round. And that's the issue when you're so accustomed to finishing everybody, is what happens when you meet your match and you can't get rid of them. We just had basically the same thing happen to one of my fighters who had an absolute war because he's been accustomed to, getting finishes pretty quickly. So I do think that the KO TKO prop sitting there at minus 150 makes sense for Khamzat Chimaev. There are multiple ways for him to open the door for Nate Diaz to spoil this fight. 1, emptying the gas tank in an emotional manner. And it does seem like Khamzat Chimaev is extremely emotional. And you're going up against one of the best head game artists in the world, and Nate Diaz, who can get inside that headspace and make you do stupid things and turn this into a brawl, which could lead to mistakes. And if he does get a little fatigued and he gets a little lazy on the mat, we've seen Nate Diaz's submission skills. They're exceptional. So I do think that Nate Diaz in the later rounds, the later this fight goes, I think that he's more and more alive to pull the upset. I think Khamzat will be dominant and should win this fight, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on Nate's skills. I don't think the scar tissue is going to help Nate at all. I think he's going to get busted up and probably finished, but there is a little doubt in my head of like, if Khamzat just gets a little bit too fatigued, that the Diaz brothers are just cardio freaks. So a late round stoppage wouldn't really surprise me in the sport of MMA.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these prop bets of Nate Diaz winning on round over DraftKings Sportsbook, round 4 plus 5,000, round 5 plus 5,500. So if you want to chase some big props, those are some big props that you could definitely chase out there. But to me, it's about, I like that round 3 Khamzat Chimaev prop plus 550. Now, looking over at the prelims, Of course, there are some prelims that from a betting side, I really don't want to get to. I think a prelim that a lot of people are going to probably look at is Hakeem Dawodu against Julian Erosa. And where I'm looking on this one, P, is like, look, Hakeem Dawodu is a guy that has been known for going the distance in his matchups. He's 6-2 in the UFC. He's gone the decision in 6 of his last 7 fights. But because of the pace that Julian Erosa brings here, I like the under 2.5 rounds at plus 110.
My guy. And I didn't know if it was just me, but I have this gut feeling Hakeem Dawodu knocks out Julian Erosa, coming from a very, very strong Muay Thai background and, and tons of accolades in Muay Thai, being a champion in tons of different organizations and weight classes. And I think that Hakeem has extreme power for the division, and he's sharp. And where I see Julian Erosa recklessly closing space and being aggressive, I think that Hakeem's going to stand his ground, plant those feet in the ground, and just knock him out. I really do. So a fighter that's really known for his decision wins sits at plus 140 to win by decision. But it's kind of interesting when I see Hakeem Dawodu sitting there as a decision guy with his KO prop only at plus 225. So seems like Vegas is a little nervous, and I do think that Dawodu knocks him out.
Yeah, that's one that sticks out to me. I will tell you another prop that I'm looking at. I'm looking at this heavyweight matchup of Jake Collier and Chris Barnett. Jake Collier is a minus 410 betting favorite, plus 330 on the other side. But I'm looking at the decision prop here on Jake Collier at plus 150. This is a guy that just continues to go to decision. And Pete, there's a trend with Jake Collier. Have you noticed the trend?
He's due for a win, I would imagine.
Yes. He has alternated losses and wins since coming back to the UFC. He's coming off that loss against Andre Arlovski, a split decision loss here. 5 of his last 7 fights have gone the distance. So I like Collier via decision here, getting plus money here at plus 150.
Yeah, I think Collier is going to be the better minute winner here. I'm always worried about Barnett landing a devastating kick, and it's heavyweight MMA. So you always have to be on the edge of your seat because one shot can really just turn the tide of the fight. I think Collier can win any way he wants to. Most likely is via decision. Can find a KO, TKO, but we've also seen him go the takedown route en route to a submission, and as well. So I will be sprinkling all of these props favoring Jake Collier. That to win by decision sits at plus 150, as you mentioned, but to win by submission sits at plus 475. So I'm definitely sprinkling some money on that.
As I look at some other props and underdogs here on the undercard, there's not a lot of pure money line underdogs that I really want to get to. If I was going to take a chance on somebody, and let me just say this, it's a risky business here. I'm looking at that second fight of the night, Elise Reed at plus 135. She takes on Melissa Martinez. Melissa Martinez making her UFC debut, hasn't fought MMA in 3 years, comes over to UFC from Combate. These are both strikers, and this is a favorable matchup for Elise Reed, where she's not going against someone that you would expect to take her to the ground. Like if I am looking for a dog on the prelims, Elise Reed would be one of the ones, but understanding it's not a fight that you're going to have a ton of confidence in.
Yeah, I mean, knee-jerk reaction was, Elise Reed is an underdog against a UFC debutant. I'm all about it. But then upon further investigation and looking into, the fight film, it's a matchup where Elise Reed could actually showcase her skills because it's a striking affair, as you mentioned. But I still think that she's going to be outgunned. I don't hate the underdog call at all. I think that this is going to be a kickboxing fight, and it's going to go, the distance. It could be pretty close. And, Melissa Martinez has a karate background. So clearly I have my karate blinders on, but I'm going to be favoring Martinez. I think it's going to go the distance, but I do not hate the Elise Reed underdog call at all.
Yeah, I mean, not some underdogs that I love all the prelims. No. Of course, if you're looking to make a bet on UFC 279, you got to take advantage of a special limited time offer that DraftKings Sportsbook has for new users. Just bet at least $5 on an NFL or college football game. You'll get $200 instantly. It's that easy. simple, easy. That's why we love it here. Click the link in the video description below to claim your free $200 now. Of course, over here on Odd Shopper, we have got you covered with everything college football wise. So you got to check out an NFL as NFL season is here. Pete, any of the last words here before we get here on this episode of Takedown City?
No, I can't wait for the card. I'll be watching as much as I can before I go into work. But I mean, like, I wish the prelims were better, but clearly I'm going to be, as soon as I get on break, going right to my phone to see how my boy Hamza Chimaev did.
Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of Takedown City. Be sure to smash that thumbs up button. That really does help us out a lot as well. Leave your picks in the comment section. Oh, I want to hear what your best bets are for UFC 279. Of course, subscribe to Odd Shopper so you can get all of our video content here. And of course, myself and Pete will be back here next week for another episode of Takedown City.